Well, Steve, there's something that goes on a lot with regard to end-time prophecy with the people who study it and are interested in it. Of course, that's not all Christians, but of the ones that are, there's something that I've seen a lot for a long time, and that is that something will happen in current events, and the prophetic teacher will try to connect that with something in the Bible. And when it's been particularly annoying to me has been the 666 thing, in Revelation 13, where it says, well, let him who has wisdom, analyze this number, and they'll say, well, if you take the letters in Hebrew, then that's Ronald Reagan, or it's Bill Clinton, of course. Then too, they take other descriptions and say, well, it's got to be Barack Obama, right? Or, I remember back in 1988, there was some guy that said 88 reasons why the rapture is going to happen in 1988.
Right.
And then there was that guy, whoever he was, I forgot his name, and he had billboards all over the place say, Jesus is coming back in 2014 or whatever it is. Well, that didn't happen. As far as I know, it didn't happen. So okay. So what is the problem that creates all of those mistakes? What should we be avoiding, or how should we be going about looking at end-time prophecy in the Bible so we don't fall into those traps?
Well, the way we've done it around here for a long time is we go into the Bible and connect scriptures in the Bible, connect the dots within the Bible, and not really look out at, manifestations in the real world, in the physical world. And, doing dates, we even did that in 2014 because it fit the timeline pretty good. But, we always use the caveat that, we don't really know. I believe we will know, but we don't really know the exact days yet. And the beauty of the timeline that we have constructed here is that it will start and end like it starts in the fall and ends in the fall. So you know that. So every year you just move the timeline, beginning in the fall when the Antichrist joins the 7-year covenant in Daniel 9:27. We just have to live by faith and understand and observe the signs that God gives us. And I think there are some specific signs that the Lord gives us, like Israel becoming a nation, Jerusalem becoming a part of Israel again, the Jews taking it back, lunar tetrads, eclipses, things like that. I think those are very important and specific because they're tied to the Moedim, God's feast days. And I think that's the difference that we do here. But setting the timeline it's just super important to understand the sequence of events of the 7 years before Jesus actually takes dominion at the 7th trumpet.
Well, okay, so we have a template then of a 7-year period, and you're saying then that within that 7 years, whenever it starts or whenever it ends, there's going to be a sequence of things that will happen on specified intervals.
Yes.
And what are those things that are going to happen during that period?
Well, we have them up here. There's the Antichrist joining the covenant, or entering into a strong and firm covenant with the many for 1 week or 7 years. And that's a big event. Now, that might not be noticeable because, the Antichrist and those that he will enter this covenant with, the elites of the world are in the occult. I think that's pretty well understood, and occult means hidden. So,
Mm-hmm.
they don't come out into the light, as it says there in John chapter 3, verse 18 to 20 or whatever. And, you have the seals, of course, especially the first 4 ones on that side of the midweek. And then you have the 7 trumpets and 7 bowls. And it's really important to differentiate the seals and the trumpets and the bowls, that you don't get them all mixed up. And there's a lot of confusion in the Christian prophecy world about that. And I think the scriptures spell it out very well if you know what you're looking for. If you let the Holy Spirit unfold it to you, I'll put it to you that way. Because really, end-time Bible prophecy, you're not going to figure it out with your brain. You need the Holy Spirit to reveal it to you.
Now, with regard to the seals, trumpets, and bowls, would it be safe to say that they are going to happen in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 order, or is that necessarily the case?
Well, in the trumpets and bowls, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutively in order.
Right.
But the seals are a whole different thing. They can bounce around.
Explain that. Well, first of all, explain why they are called seals, and that's not orb. It's unsealing.
Yeah.
An old document was sealed with wax or something, and so
Right.
to open it up,
Exactly.
you had to break the seal. So why is that terminology used here for those things that were called seals?
Yeah, well, in the book of Revelation, in chapter 4, you see a throne, and God's sitting on the throne in a glassy sea, and everybody's worshiping. And, he gets down to chapter 5, and he says, "And I saw lying on the open hand of him who was seated on a throne, a scroll written within and on the back, closed and sealed with 7 seals."
7 seals.
Okay, so the revelation is written in the scroll, but it's sealed. Like even in the 12th chapter of Daniel, he told Daniel, "Shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro and search anxiously." Okay, but these things are sealed. They're hidden. They're secrets. They're mysteries that God keeps hidden until at this point, in 95 AD or whenever it was, that he revealed it to the Apostle John when he was caught up in this vision, or caught up to the 3rd heaven, or however it was. And, no one was able to break the seals. Well, the seals were like, the king's, it was
Signet ring, yeah.
like a signet ring, right? You couldn't open it, but the Lion of the tribe of Judah, he was worthy. So when they broke the seals and they opened it, John could read it. He could see it, and he wrote it down. And he told him, and I think in chapter 1 or 2, he said, "Write it down. The things you see, the things I tell you, write it down," which is where we get the book of Revelation.
Wow.
So he, in the 6th chapter of Revelation, he breaks the first seal, and Lamb broke open one of the 7 seals, and the 4 living creatures call out, "Come and see." And he looked, and there was a white horse whose rider carried a bow, and he rode forth conquering and to conquer, and on with the seals. They're broken, and the revelation is unveiled to John, and we get the book of Revelation.
But trumpets are something different.
Trumpets are different. Trumpets and bowls, trumpets are within the seals. The seals explain the trumpets. The seal, the breaking of the seal just tells you how it is. let me give you an example. These first four seals, you have a white horse, a red horse, a black horse, and a green horse, or a pale horse. Green, Chloe is the Greek word. Mm-hmm. We always say green around here because that's what it is. It's a green horse. Pale horse is a green horse. And, you know, he broke the seals, and it revealed to John the revelation of it, what was going to happen. The seals were broken in 95 AD. It's revealing what's going to happen in the last days, the days that we live in now. But the seals were broken way back then. Okay? And it's real straightforward in Revelation chapter 6 through 8, those first four horses. And then he opens the fifth seal, and, you know, people were martyred and they were seen in heaven. But when he opens the sixth seal covers the last half of chapter 6, which comes down here to the very end. It doesn't stay in sequence. The sixth seal covers this, and then in the second half of chapter 7, it goes back to the middle on the timeline, you know, and at the end of chapter 7, it comes back to the end. It's just telling you different things that are happening. And the way we set up the timeline and teach it, we always do everything else first. We do the abomination of desolation and the covenant, and we do the trumpets and the bowls and the great tribulation. Then we do the seals last because it kind of overlays everything else. That's kind of how that works.
Okay, so the trumpets then coincide with the Moedim, the feast days. Is that correct?
I think they do. We know the very last one does. And, you know, the trumpets cover a period of 42 months, 3.5 years. And, you know, if you divide it up, you're going to get, you could evenly divide it up into, 6 in the middle, right? The seventh one being the end, and they would all be 6 months apart. Mm-hmm. And we know that the covenant starts in the in the fall, right? And we know it ends in the fall on the seventh, on the Feast of Trumpets, with Jesus taking dominion. And if you count back 3.5 years, well, that would be the middle of 7 years, correct? So the middle of 7 years is the Feast of Passover and unleavened bread,
right.
First fruits.
First fruits, right.
So, you know, it does logically look that way.
So it's really basically 6 months. I haven't done the math, but I'm assuming it's 6 months from Passover to the fall feast time.
Yes.
Tabernacle?
Yes,
Trumpets.
yes, you're correct.
And so that is why the lunar tetrads, when there's 4 of the lunar eclipses and they're 6 months apart each time, why they are falling on the feast days.
Correct, yes.
Because the feast days are 6 months apart.
6 months apart, right. Usually April and, late March, April, and usually September, October at the latest. Mm-hmm. And they're always, and that's the way it works, so. Yes.
Well, and Israel's on the lunar calendar, for that matter.
Absolutely. And Israel is on the lunar calendar. That is true. And the fifth seal, which is, these locusts coming out of the abyss that sting man for 5 months. So it would fit in that 6 month frame there. So that kind of gives you a little template there. Me personally...
That was the fifth trumpet you made.
Fifth trumpet.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, fifth trumpet is the locust. And it lasts for 5 months, so it would fit and give you kind of a template there. Me personally, I do think they're going to be on the feast days. Why do I think that? Because at the same time the trumpets are blowing in these judgments, Moses and Elijah, the 2 witnesses, you can look at our video on the 2 witnesses and see why we say Moses and Elijah. Lots of evidence there, but of course, they were, Moses gave them the law, right? He gave them the feast days through the Lord.
Well, and doesn't it say in Psalm 81, I think it is, blow the trumpet on the feast days?
On the feast days and the new moon
and
and
the
the
new
Sabbath.
moon and the Sabbath.
Right,
So, yeah.
right. So there you go. So, yes.
And so if God's going to blow a trumpet, He's going to do it on the day He said to blow trumpets.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, what about the bowls? What is that?
Well, the bowls, this is a good question. In Revelation chapter 15, he says, then I saw a wonder in heaven, great and marvelous. There were 7 angels bringing 7 plagues, which are the last. And for with them God's wrath is completely expressed. Mm-hmm. So we have 7 bowls of God's wrath. Later in the chapter, let's see, he says, there came, verse 6, there came out of the temple sanctuary 7 angels bringing 7 plagues, arrayed in gleaming linen. One of the 4 living creatures gave the 7 angels 7 bowls full of wrath and indignation of God, right? And then, of course, it goes right into chapter 16 of the book of Revelation and tells you exactly what the 7 bowls of wrath are. Mm-hmm. And Jesus said that when you see the abomination of desolation standing where it ought not to be, not to be, standing, not taking his seat, but standing where it ought not to be, then there would be great tribulation, such as never was since there was a nation till that time, never will be again. If those days had not been shortened, no human being would endure and survive.
So that's why it's 40 days.
That's why it's
any
40 days.
Than that.
As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. They went in to the ark, Noah and his family, for 7 days, right? 7 days, right? 1 week, Daniel's 70th week, and then it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Well, in Isaiah chapter 24, I think it's verse 19, he says very specifically, and that is a real end-time chapter, Isaiah chapter 24. Mm-hmm. The earth swings to and fro like a hammock, right? As verse 18, actually. And he who flees at the noise of the terror will fall into a pit, and he who comes up out of the pit will be caught in a snare. For the windows of the heavens are opened, and the foundations of the earth shall tremble and shake. Well, in Noah's time, when the windows of heavens were open, it rained. Right, and flooded the earth, and only 8 people in number survived. Well, in the last days, as it was in the days of Noah, he opens the windows of heaven, and he pours out 7 bowls of wrath. Okay?
Now, that brings up another point with regard to what I was talking about at the beginning, about the confusion that exists in end-time prophecy. Is so many people don't have the terminology that we have, right, where they say, well, it's a 7-year tribulation, or maybe a 3.5-year tribulation, which would imply if that's the period of time during which the bowls of wrath are going to be poured out, then that's no flesh could survive 3.5 years of that stuff.
Right, exactly. Yeah, if you read the bowls of wrath in chapter 16, I mean, it turns all the water to blood. Well, you're just not going to survive for 3.5 years with all the water turned to blood. Things like that. It's extreme. God's wrath is completely expressed, right? And 3.5 years just is way too long a time for anybody to survive that. And the Bible teaches there are those who survive and go on living into the millennial reign of Jesus.
Yeah, otherwise he wouldn't have told them to escape Jerusalem and flee to the mountains.
Exactly, yes. So that's a great point. And see, but that would be great tribulation, okay? Now, the first 7 years before the 40 days of wrath poured out, the great tribulation, that's tribulation. But you know what? The tribulation began when Adam and Eve
There
sinned.
you go. We're in tribulation.
You know, John said,
Now.
I am a participator with you in tribulation. Jesus said, in this world you shall have tribulation.
Right.
So, yeah, terminology is really important. You know, we throw a lot of these terms around, and I think we don't really know what we're talking about. A lot of it is just sensationalized. And accurate terminology is really, really important in end-time prophecy.
Amen.
Super important.
Amen.
We need to all get on the same page on that thing.
I agree.
So,
Amen.